My name is Marina Dalton. I was 16 years old when my mother decided my face was a threat. Before that, it was just my life. A normal one, or at least that's what it looked like from the outside. We were at the mall on a Saturday afternoon, one of those quiet errands disguised as bonding. My mother insisted on approving all my school clothes, even though I was old enough to have opinions. She trailed behind me with crossed arms, evaluating each rack like it was a moral test. That's when a woman approached us. She was polished, but not flashy. Mid-30s, calm confidence. She introduced herself as Victoria Sterling, handed me a business card, and smiled like she already knew the answer. "You have an incredible look," she said. "Your bone structure, your height. Have you ever considered modeling?" I laughed, because that's what you do when something impossible lands in your lap. Me, no, never. She didn't push. She just explained, briefly, professionally, about her agency in the city, about evaluations, about potential. No promises, no pressure. My mother snatched the card from my hand the second Victoria walked away. "Absolutely not," she said flatly. "That industry destroys girls." "Mom," I protested, "it could just be an evaluation." They prey on insecure teenagers. End of discussion. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I looked up the agency, looked up Victoria. Everything checked out. Real clients, real models, real campaigns. This wasn't a scam. At breakfast, I brought it up again. My father, Gerald Dalton, looked up from his newspaper. Why not hear them out? My mother's jaw tightened, because I said no. He paused. If it's legitimate, it could help her confidence, maybe even college savings. That was the first time I saw something flicker behind my mother's eyes. Not concern. Fear. That weekend, my father drove me to the agency. Victoria was everything she'd seemed. Professional, clear, honest. No upfront fees. Commission only after paid work. "She has potential," Victoria told my dad. Real potential. I said yes before I could overthink it. My mother didn't speak the entire drive home. The silence felt heavier than yelling. Over the next 6 months, my life expanded in ways I didn't know were possible. Test shoots, workshops, casting calls. My father drove me everywhere, proud in a quiet, steady way. I booked my first paid job in December, a small catalog shoot. The check wasn't huge, but to me, it was proof. My mother barely looked at it. "You're getting too thin," she said one night. "That makeup ages you. You used to be smarter." Each comment landed softly, but repeatedly. By spring, I'd booked more work, commercials, print ads, even a small editorial. My agency whispered about bigger things. My mother started forgetting things, losing things, misplacing my portfolio. Once it disappeared entirely. She said she thought it was trash. That was when I started feeling it. Not anger, competition. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice warned me, this isn't about modeling. This is about control. 2 weeks later, she asked me to help clean the garage. She was calm, too calm. And I should have listened to that feeling. Because some storms don't announce themselves. They smile first. The garage smelled like dust and old paint, the kind of stale air that settles into forgotten spaces. Sunlight filtered through the narrow window near the ceiling, cutting the room into long, pale stripes. My mother moved with unusual patience that afternoon, sorting boxes, wiping shelves, even humming under her breath. It should have comforted me. Instead, it unsettled me. For weeks after I signed with the agency, she had oscillated between sharp remarks and cold silence. This softness, felt borrowed, like a costume she hadn't worn in years. "Hand me that box," she said, pointing to one stacked near the back wall. I obeyed. I always did. As we worked, she asked questions she'd avoided for months. "How many castings do you have this week? Are you still keeping your grades up? Does your father drive you everywhere?" Her tone was light, almost curious, but there was an edge beneath it, something calculating. I answered carefully, sensing that any wrong word might snap the fragile peace. Upstairs, the house was quiet. My father had taken my younger brother, Kyle, to a weekend basketball tournament 2 towns over. It was just the two of us, alone. In hindsight, that should have frightened me. At 16, though, I was still clinging to hope. Hope that this meant something had shifted, that maybe my mother was finally trying to understand me. By then, my modeling life had started to feel real. Not glamorous, real. Early mornings, rejection emails, waiting rooms filled with girls who looked like they'd stepped out of magazines. I learned quickly that beauty wasn't enough. You had to be resilient, adaptable. invisible when necessary. I liked the challenge. My father noticed the change before anyone else. I stood taller, spoke more confidently. I laughed more easily around him, like some part of myself had finally been allowed to breathe. My mother noticed too. "You're getting arrogant," she said one night after dinner, watching me scroll through emails on my phone. "I'm just checking my schedule," I replied. "You never used to stare at yourself this much." "I'm not staring at myself, I'm working." She scoffed. "That's not work, that's vanity." I learned then that defending myself only fed her anger, so I stopped explaining, stopped sharing. I told my father things quietly, in the car, or when my mother was out volunteering, something she did constantly, earning praise from everyone who didn't live with her. At school, whispers followed me down the halls. Some kids were impressed. Others were cruel. "She thinks she's better than us now. Wait until she fails." My best friend, Harper, shut them down whenever she could. "They're jealous," she told me over fries one afternoon. "You're doing something real. They're just scared." I wanted to believe that. At home, the sabotage grew subtler and sharper. One morning, I overslept for an early casting. My alarm hadn't gone off. When I rushed downstairs, heart pounding, my mother was calmly drinking coffee. "You didn't hear your alarm?" she asked mildly. I checked my phone. It had been turned off. Another day, she scheduled a dentist appointment during an important callback, one she'd known about. "I forgot," she said. "These things happen." My father started noticing patterns. "That's the third time this month," he said quietly one evening. "Susan, this isn't fair to her." "She's 16, my mother snapped. "She doesn't need a career. She needs support." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. She said nothing, but her eyes burned. Kyle noticed too. "Why does Mom hate your modeling stuff?" he asked one night, sprawled on my bed with his game controller. "Dad seems proud." "I don't think she hates it," I said slowly. "I think she hates what it represents." "What does it represent?" I thought of the way strangers looked at me now, of the way doors opened. Just a crack. "Independence," I said. By April, I booked my biggest job yet, a regional clothing campaign. $6,000. When I told my father, he hugged me so hard I laughed. He brought home flowers that night, a card. He told me he was proud. My mother watched from the kitchen, her face unreadable. During dinner, she exploded. "Our daughter is becoming a professional clothes hanger," she said coldly. "Stop," my father warned. "She's throwing her future away." "I have a 3.9 GPA, I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not failing." "Not good enough," she shot back. That was the night something broke between us. 2 weeks later, she asked me to clean the garage. Now, as I bent to lift a heavy shelf with her, I felt that same unease crawl up my spine. There was a loud crack. Glass shattered. I barely had time to look up. Pain exploded across my face, white-hot, blinding. Something sharp dragged across my cheek, down to my jaw. I screamed, dropping the shelf as warm liquid poured through my fingers. "Mom, what did you do?" She stood there holding a broken picture frame, her expression eerily calm. "It was an accident," she said. "You should have been more careful." I knew then. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was something far darker. And my life, my face, would never be the same. At first, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. My hand was pressed against my cheek, slick with something warm. The garage floor tilted beneath me, the walls stretching and blurring like a bad dream. I remember the smell of dust and oil mixing with metal, sharp, unmistakable. Blood. "Mom," I gasped, "you cut me." She didn't rush toward me. She didn't scream or drop the glass in horror. She just stood there, holding the broken picture frame, the jagged edge glinting in the light. "You moved," she said evenly. "That's what happened." I stared at her, stunned. My fingers trembled as more blood seeped through them, dripping onto my shirt, the concrete. "You swung it at me," I said. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Don't exaggerate," she replied. "You always exaggerate." Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I stumbled past her into the house, my shoulder brushing the doorframe. Each step sent a jolt of pain through my face. In the kitchen, I grabbed the first towel I could find and pressed it hard against my cheek. The fabric soaked through almost instantly. My hands were shaking as I dialed my father. "Dad," I said when he answered, "you need to come home, now." "What's wrong?" His voice sharpened instantly. There was a pause, just half a second, but it felt endless. "I'm on my way," he said. I slid down against the counter, my legs giving out beneath me. The pain was relentless, pulsing, spreading. I could feel the cut gaping when I tried to move my jaw. My mother appeared in the doorway. You're making this into something it's not, she said calmly. It was an accident. I didn't answer. I couldn't look at her. When my father arrived 20 minutes later, the sound of his car screeching into the driveway made me flinch. He burst through the door and froze when he saw me. The towel was dark red. Blood had soaked through my shirt and dotted the floor beneath me. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Marina." He knelt in front of me, hands hovering, afraid to touch my face. His eyes flicked to my mother. "What happened?" "She moved suddenly," my mother said. "The frame broke." He looked back at me. "Is that true?" I shook my head, tears spilling over. She swung it at me. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. My father didn't argue with her. He didn't raise his voice. He grabbed his keys, wrapped a clean towel around my face, and helped me to the car. "We're going to the hospital," he said firmly. "Now." At the emergency room, everything blurred into fluorescent lights and clipped voices. A nurse ushered me into a curtained room while my father filled out paperwork with shaking hands. The doctor examined my face carefully, her expression tightening with each second. "This is a deep laceration," she said. "You're going to need stitches, a lot of them." She asked how it happened. I hesitated. Saying it out loud felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. "My mother did it," I said finally, "on purpose." Her eyes sharpened. "I'm required to report suspected abuse," she said gently. "Are you sure?" "Yes." They brought my father into the room, and I told the story again, from the modeling to the sabotage to the garage. Each word felt heavier than the last. "I knew she was angry," my father said hoarsely. "I didn't know she was capable of this." Security arrived, then social services, then a police officer. By the time a plastic surgeon came in to assess the damage, I was exhausted, numb. "The cut runs from your cheekbone to your jaw," she explained, her tone careful. "I'll do everything I can, but there will be a scar." The word hit harder than the glass had. A scar. My face, my work, my identity, altered forever. The procedure took over an hour. 25 stitches. When it was over, my face was wrapped in bandages, my skin throbbing despite the medication. A detective came to take my statement. My father sat beside me, his hand gripping mine like an anchor. "She's been arrested," the detective said afterward. "Given the circumstances, this is being treated as assault." "Good," my father said quietly. That night, we stayed in a hotel. Kyle was with a friend's family, unaware of everything that had happened. I cried until my chest hurt. My father held me, apologizing over and over. "This isn't your fault," I told him. "You didn't know." But part of me wondered how long it had been building, and how close we'd come to something even worse. In the mirror that night, I barely recognized myself. Bandages covered half my face. My eyes looked older, hollow. Something had been taken from me in that garage. Not just my skin, my safety, my trust. And as I lay awake listening to the hum of the air conditioner, one thought kept circling my mind, relentless and cold. She didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted to stop me. The days after the hospital blurred together, stitched with painkillers, paperwork, and a silence that felt heavier than the bandages on my face. My mother wasn't allowed near me. The restraining order came quickly, 500 feet from our house, my school, and the modeling agency. Seeing her name written in black ink on official documents felt surreal, like it belonged to someone else's family, not mine. My face throbbed constantly. Even breathing felt sharp. Each morning my father helped me clean the wound, his hands shaking as he tried not to hurt me. "I should have stopped this sooner," he kept saying. "Dad," I told him, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "You didn't know. None of us did." But I think we both knew that wasn't entirely true. There had been signs. The bitterness, the control, the way my success had twisted into something ugly in her eyes. We just hadn't wanted to name it. I missed 2 weeks of school. When I finally returned, the whispers followed me everywhere. Some kids stared openly at the bandages. Others avoided me completely, like pain was contagious. Harper stayed glued to my side. "If anyone asks, I'll shut them down," she promised. "You don't owe anyone explanations." The hardest call was the one I dreaded most, calling Victoria. My voice broke the moment she answered. "I was attacked," I said quietly, "by my mother." There was a long pause on the line. "Oh, Marina," she said softly. "I'm so sorry." "I know this probably ends everything," I added quickly. "The campaign in June. I can't—" "Stop," she interrupted gently. "Right now, your job is to heal. We'll deal with the rest later." Still, the loss hit hard when the June campaign officially fell through. The client needed to move forward. They were kind, apologetic, but it didn't change the outcome. $6,000. Gone. More than that, the momentum. The future I'd been racing toward. My mother was formally charged with assault causing bodily harm. She hired a lawyer who insisted it had been an accident, that I'd moved suddenly, that she was a worried parent pushed too far. The words made my stomach churn. My father filed for divorce and full custody of Kyle and me. My mother didn't fight it. She barely spoke at all, according to her lawyer. By August, my stitches came out. The scar remained. A thin, angry line ran from my left cheekbone down toward my jaw. Some days it looked faint. Other days, it screamed at me from the mirror. Dr. Armstrong was honest. "It'll fade," she said, "but it won't disappear." Neither would the memory. When I went back to the agency for the first time, my hands shook as I pushed open the door. Victoria looked up, and then she crossed the room and hugged me carefully, avoiding my face. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to keep modeling. I just don't know if anyone will want me now." She leaned back, studying me, not critically, but thoughtfully. "The industry is changing," she said. "And sometimes what makes you different is what makes you unforgettable." A week later, we did a test shoot. The photographer, Sebastian, spoke to me like I was a collaborator, not a problem to be fixed. He adjusted the lighting, showed me angles that softened the scar, and others that highlighted it. "Strength," he said quietly as he clicked the shutter. "That's what people will see." When I looked at the photos afterward, I barely recognized myself. I looked older, harder, but also grounded. Victoria submitted me again, this time being upfront about the scar. Some clients passed immediately. Others asked questions. A few were intrigued. I booked a shoot for an athletic wear brand that loved what they called my warrior energy. Then came the trial. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping into a spotlight I never wanted. My mother sat at the defense table, smaller somehow, her eyes darting everywhere except at me. I testified calmly. I told them about the modeling, the sabotage, the garage. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. My father testified next, then the doctors, the police officer. The prosecutor dismantled the accident narrative piece by piece. "This wasn't a momentary lapse," she said firmly. "This was months of escalating hostility, culminating in deliberate violence." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 3 years. When they returned with a guilty verdict, I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. The judge sentenced my mother to 2 years in prison, followed by probation and mandatory counseling. "You betrayed your duty as a parent," the judge said. "That harm cannot be undone." My mother cried, tried to speak, tried to apologize. I felt nothing. We moved shortly after, to a different neighborhood, a different school district. A clean break, my father said. The scar healed slowly, so did I. I learned how to face cameras again, how to answer questions without flinching, how to stand in my body without apologizing for what it had survived. Something inside me had changed. I was still afraid sometimes, but I was no longer small, and I was no longer silent. Senior year arrived quietly, without ceremony, like it didn't want to disturb the fragile balance we'd rebuilt. Our new house felt neutral. No memories pressed into the walls yet. My father cooked more. Kyle laughed louder. Therapy appointments became routine, not a sign of weakness, but maintenance, like physical training for a muscle that had been injured. The scar faded from angry red to pale pink. It never disappeared. Some mornings I traced it with my fingertip, grounding myself in the reality that I was still here. Modeling didn't look the way it once had. I wasn't chasing runways anymore. I was being chosen, selectively, intentionally, by brands that wanted authenticity instead of polish. Campaigns about resilience, editorials about redefining beauty, nonprofits supporting abuse survivors. Each job felt heavier, more meaningful. I wasn't being admired. I was being understood. College acceptance letters arrived in spring. I chose a university 3 hours away with a strong business and marketing program. My father cried when I told him. Kyle pretended not to, then hugged me too tightly. "You're not leaving forever," he said. "No," I promised, "just growing." College gave me space. Distance softened the past without erasing it. I modeled part-time, studied late, learned how contracts worked, how agencies failed the people they claimed to protect. That's when the idea formed. Not revenge. Reform. During my sophomore year, I met Nathan Cross, a photography student with kind eyes and quiet patience. He noticed the scar immediately, but never asked about it. He waited until I told him, weeks later, sitting on the steps outside the art building. "That doesn't define you," he said simply. I know, I replied, but it shaped me. He understood complicated families, loss, boundaries. He never pressured me to forgive, never suggested healing required reconciliation. Forgiveness isn't a debt, he told me one night when I admitted my guilt. It's a choice. And sometimes choosing yourself is the healthiest one. My mother was released after 18 months for good behavior. I didn't attend. She sent letters, apologies wrapped in excuses. I stopped reading them after the first paragraph. When relatives called, urging me to reconnect, I was calm but firm. She didn't make a mistake, I said. She made a choice. Some thought I was cruel. They didn't see the blood on the garage floor, didn't feel glass tearing skin, didn't wake up afraid in their own home. Graduation day arrived warm and bright. As I crossed the stage, scar visible under the lights, I felt something close to peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd survived. After college, I worked behind the scenes, consulting, mentoring, advocating. When Victoria announced her retirement, she asked me to take over her roster of young talent. You understand what they need, she said. Protection, honesty, someone who sees them as human first. I named the agency Sterling Vision. We built it slowly, carefully, ethics first, consent always, transparency without compromise. My mother tried to contact me again, once showing up at an event where I was speaking. Security escorted her out before she reached me. I didn't flinch. Kyle got engaged. His fiancée asked gently whether we should invite our mother. I told her the truth. She's not part of our lives. She nodded. She didn't ask again. Last month, another letter arrived, this time at my office. I held it for a long time. Nathan watched me quietly. Do you want to open it? He asked. I thought about the girl I used to be. 16, hopeful, wanting approval. Then I threw it away. The scar is still there, faint, permanent. A reminder of jealousy, of violence, of survival. My mother took things from me that day in the garage. Innocence, certainty, a version of my future. But she didn't take my determination. She didn't take my voice. She didn't take my ability to choose who stays. Some wounds don't heal. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. And accepting that doesn't make me broken. It makes me free.